Chair Rabinowitz, I was just going to note that committee member Carter is actually on the phone today, just so you know.
Okay.
So not quite 9 o'clock, so we'll wait a little longer anyway.
So I can't see anybody except you, Amy. Is that okay for now? Are we?
Yes, I'll pull the slide down in just a moment.
Oh, hey, and Amy, while I'm thinking about it, is it Christine or Christina?
Christine.
Christine.
Yes, thank you.
Christine. Okay, thank you.
We were just coming out of an all-staff meeting, so I'm guessing she'll be here pretty close to 9.
Okay. Just wanted to get the name right.
Thank you so much.
With a name like Rabinowitz, I'm sensitive to these things. Although I never fault anybody for messing my name up.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And if we want to wait just a few more minutes, we can get started about 9 o'clock. It looks like we do have a quorum with Charles on calling in. Okay, give me just 1 second.
There we are.
Hey, Michelle.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm just warning that I'm only halfway on my charge and no ability to recharge right now, so they may drop off here.
Okay, we totally understand. If I see you drop off, I'll make sure we'll still have a quorum, so we will be okay.
Okay.
Thank you
All
for
right,
letting me
great.
know.
Steve, is it possible we could rearrange the agenda and put the front loaded so that we don't lose Charles?
That's a good question. Amy, well, you mean to have the item switched?
Yeah, to put the two items on 5, put them right after we call roll and get public comments. Because everything else, I don't think Charles needs to be here for.
Amy is nodding your head. It depends, but do we have the people the applicants who will speak on the medical building proposal?
So far it looks like I have the planner for item 1. I'm not sure who the applicant team is for each item. Kristen A, could you unmute for just 1 second and let me know who on your applicant team, so we can see if we at least have your applicant team ready?
Should be Tom Johnson.
Okay, I don't see a Tom Johnson on as of yet.
No.
So that's on the AT&T telecommunication facility, are we talking?
Yes.
Correct.
What about, but the other thing that Arthur is asking about, if I'm not mistaken, is having the Brookwood Medical
Oh,
building on, but that would, Susie Murray is the planner on that one, it looks like.
that's correct. And I don't see her on as of yet.
So it's 9 o'clock. Arthur, it's a little complicated to start an item without the planner and the,
Yeah. Let's just move through stuff. I just don't want to lose Charles
well,
and
Charles,
have these things delayed, these projects delayed.
I don't want to lose him either. We'll do our best through some of this stuff, which is just rote. So anyway, I'm going to call the December 16th meeting to order. It's 9 o'clock. And could the recording secretary, Michelle, you want to do the roll call?
Yes. So let the record reflect that all committee members are present with the exception of member Adam Sharon, and noting that Charles Carter is calling in.
Okay, very good. Okay, I've been asked to read a statement. The City of Santa Rosa is committed to creating a safe and inclusive environment. We will not tolerate speech or actions that disrupt a public meeting or which may be perceived as aggressive, demeaning, or harmful towards staff, an applicant team, or other meeting participants. Staff will be monitoring the meeting and ensuring that everyone is participating respectfully. If staff determines that a meeting participant is acting in a disruptive or disrespectful manner, they will be first muted and given a warning. If the behavior continues, they will then be removed. If necessary, we may also immediately end the meeting. If any participants have any additional questions or concerns, please reach out directly to the project planner or the applicant team. So now I'm going to ask for public comments. This is the time when any person may address the subcommittee on matters not listed on the agenda, but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the committee. Anyone want to make a comment?
If you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hand now. Okay, and I am not seeing any hands.
Okay. I've been asked to read about the role of the Waterways Committee, which is to review development projects, both public and private. They're located adjacent to creeks and waterways for consistency with the goals, policies, and regulations for creekside development identified in the Santa Rosa General Plan, Zoning Code, Design Guidelines, and Citywide Creek Master Plan. While the committee does not take formal action on projects, it does provide advisory comments to the decision-making body. All development projects located within, adjacent to a creek or waterway are required to be reviewed by the Waterways Advisory Committee prior to proceeding through the entitlement process. Okay, this item is committee reports. I do not have any reports. Does anyone else on the committee want to make a report?
Well, I just have a question. So what is the status of the members that are expiring right now? Do we have anything on that?
No, I don't think so at this time. I can review that for our next meeting if you'd like.
Any other questions or comments by committee members on general committee matters? Hearing none, we'll move to the department report. Amy, is there?
Chair, Carol raised her hand.
Sorry, I didn't see it. Hi,
It
Carol.
was very last minute. I just wanted to say how much fun it was down at Prince Memorial Greenway. Was it 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, first
Saturday.
Maybe two, but yeah, I remember that. And I remember
Yeah.
seeing you there too.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I hope to be back there early in the new year.
Well, Carol, you always do so much in volunteering. It's so wonderful. Yes, it was a very successful Saturday with probably 20 plus people. And it got to the point where we really didn't have much to pick up. People did such a good job. So thank you to those who participated. Anybody else have any comments or reports? Okay, how about Amy, anything from your department?
Sure, I have a few little things. One, since we last met, we moved forward a item to the city council for a short-term rental ordinance. So that was adopted by the council on an urgency basis. And so it's in effect and applications are coming in. So we will be working on a comprehensive ordinance over the next 6 months, so early 2022. And also our hazard mitigation plan was adopted by the council about 2 weeks ago. Or was that last week? Last week. And then also our general plan update is moving along. So we are releasing our alternatives workbook, which is looking at different land use and circulation alternatives for the general plan update. So we did have a community advisory committee meeting on Monday and our technical advisory committee meeting last week. So there will be more coming out shortly on the outreach and engagement that will be happening over the next few months on that effort. And then just a few things on staffing here. Andy Gustafson, who has been leading our general plan effort, he is retiring. So this is his last week with us. So we're very sad to see him moving on, but very happy for him. And also, we're very happy to announce that Jessica Jones is coming back to the city, or has come back to the city. So she's my counterpoint, supervising our current planning team. So you might see her here and there as well. And I don't have anything else, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you all have any.
We still have you though. Jessica's not gonna step in on you?
No, she's actually the planning commission liaison. So we're still in a little bit of flux because Claire is interim assistant city manager. So we don't have a deputy director at the moment. So there may be some shuffling once everything's solidified, but you get me for now.
Okay, great.
Well, we're happy to have you, Amy, but I'm certainly glad to hear that Jessica's back on staff. Any questions of Amy? Okay, how about the water department? Any reports? I see
Yes,
Steve.
Chair and members of the committee, it's been a busy time for Creeks, as it always is. Just a couple of quick updates. Our Lower Colton Creek Phase 2 project. We were able to complete all of the in-stream work prior to October 15th, which was great. But then we got hit with that rather large event, which was good. We were able to contain the floodwaters, but we did have a couple issues with a couple of the structures that were constructed. So we will be doing some work on those probably in the spring or the summer of next year. And also after the first of the year, the Laguna Foundation will be doing the rest of the restoration planting as part of the project. So I think it's around 1,200 trees and shrubs. will be going in along the creek, and also some additional willows will be planted. So hopefully before too long, we'll have some greenery out there and things will be growing. And then also there is a little bit more work to do on the gravel road on the east side of the project, kind of along the Canine Companions area. So all of that will be happening, and we will be having some community planting days. We don't have the dates for those yet. Once we do, we can get those to the committee, and so things are going okay there. And then, yeah, with that large rain event we had, October 24th was a really large, really a rainfall event. But really, it was not that large of a flood event, which was interesting. But really, conditions were so dry that we really didn't see the runoff that we would anticipate, because that was by far the largest 24-hour rain total we've ever seen in Santa Rosa. So we were over 7 inches, I believe 7.5 or so. So I think if we were to get that same rain right now, we would have some flooding concerns around town. So it was kind of a good time to get such a large event, and hopefully we'll keep the rain going, but not so large of events. And we'll keep trying to make up the rain here. And then also on just trash around our creeks, we're still working at that. And actually it's been kind of nice with some of these rain events that, you know, trash will move around through the storm drains and into our creeks. And then as the creeks drop, we can get in there with our supervised adult crews and our city staff to get things cleaned up. So we're busy doing that. And as we come to the end of the calendar year, we will have a update from our creek stewardship program, but I think we could probably do that at a meeting if we have in January or after that. So I would be more than happy to answer any questions you might have.
Anyone?
I just have one.
Go ahead.
Hey, what's up with that clock behind you?
Let's see here. I don't know what time it is. Oh, I think it's actually, no, it says 10:15, so it's off by an hour. I'm in a city conference room.
Well, you made it here on time, so good on you.
Good eye, Art.
Anyone else? Yes, Steve, please do let us know about the opportunity for tree planting. I look with pride back at the tree planting we did on Brush Creek by Flat Rock Park many years ago when we did tree planting there. And then also in Olive Park by the Prince Memorial Greenway. And the trees we planted then are growing, and it's a wonderful thing to be a part of. And sometime perhaps in the spring, when the weather's changing, we can have a little outing as a committee to look at the wonderful work you've done on the Colgan Creek project. So thanks again.
All right, thank you.
How about the Sonoma Water Department? Is there anyone here from the water agency?
I am not seeing him on today.
Okay, so we're going to move into our first scheduled item, which is the AT&T telecommunication facility. And we have Christine Tumians here. Would you like to give us information about the project, please?
Yes, for some reason I'm not able to start my, oh, there it is. Okay, thank
There we
you.
are.
Let me share my PowerPoint with you. So as you stated, this is a proposed AT&T telecommunication facility, a wireless tower at 2400 Bluebell Drive. It's a predominantly industrial area. The project includes a major design review that would be reviewed by the Design Review Board, and a major conditional use permit, which would go to the Planning Commission to allow a new 60-foot tall wireless communication facility and a supporting equipment shelter and backup generator. And it's located in the northwest quadrant of the city. And here is the aerial of the project location. It's developed with a industrial building. The proposed communications facility would be in the back. And as you can see, a small portion of the lot is directly adjacent to Piner Creek. And the rear portion of the lot is adjacent to Smart Rail. And the general plan and zoning for the lot and the surrounding area on the east side of the tracks is light industry and light industrial. And here's a little bit close-up view showing the Piner Creek buffer. And here is the, get this out of the way, the planning watershed area for the Santa Rosa Creek showing, oh, this is the wrong, I apologize, this is the wrong map.
There's Colton Creek.
Sorry, this is incorrect. So let me talk about Piner Creek Reach 2, which is directly adjacent to the project site. It's designated as a modified natural creek, a modified creek and culvert consisting of approximately 7,430 linear feet. The creek is in a culvert from Highway 101 to Airway Drive, where it daylights as a modified natural type channel. Downstream of the confluence with the North Fork of Piner Creek, the creek is owned and maintained for flood control by the Water Agency. Between Coffee Lane and the railroad tracks, the access road is not open to the public. And I don't believe there are any plans to open that anytime soon. Habitat enhancement is recommended throughout the reach, involving removal of invasive species and replacement with native vegetation. Here's the applicant's site plan. So it's showing the trenching for the underground electrical supply, and the equipment shelter would be towards the rear along with the cell tower. He's showing the Santa Rosa Creek. Here's a little bit of a close-up. And it's hard to see on this PowerPoint, but he does show a setback to the creek, to the fence. So to the fence of the equipment shelter. And I believe it's 25 feet if I read that correctly, from the edge of the creek to the fence. And here is elevations of the proposed tower. It would be 60 feet tall with a antenna array. And you can see the equipment shelter below that would house a standby generator and various equipment that's needed to operate the tower. So he did provide some photo simulations of what it would look like once it's installed. As you can see, the surroundings are predominantly industrial location. And here's a straight on view of the project site and the antenna array. So as I stated, there would be two opportunities for the public to comment and participate on this project. There's a major conditional use permit that the Planning Commission would review and major design review that the Design Review Board would review. And if you have any questions, I'm available to answer them. I don't believe my applicant is here, but I can relay your comments to him if he is not.
Thank you, Christine. Are there any, since we don't have the applicant, we might as well move to the next part, which is where we ask for questions by committee members for the staff. Once we answer all the questions, we will then open public comment, and then we'll give our views on the project. So are there any questions of Christine?
Yeah, I've got a
Kevin's
couple.
got his hand up first. There you go.
Christine, thanks for the presentation. Couple questions. I looked at that close-up. It looks like it's 35 feet from the edge of the creek, which is great, beyond the 30. But we usually talk about the top of the bank instead of the edge of the creek. Are we taking edge of the creek here to be top of the bank, and does that need to be verified with the applicant?
So yes, we would need to verify that with the applicant. we received that modified site plan in just enough time for this meeting. And so I believe engineering is also reviewing the resubmittal of the site plan, and they're issuing a comment letter that would include that as a point of correction for the applicant.
Sounds good. Okay, and then the other question is, I went out and looked at the site, and it's a pretty empty field. It looks like a pretty good placement for this pole. Are the existing fences going to remain where they are, or are the fences going to be moved? I'm just trying to get a perspective on where it is relative to where the pole will be relative to the creek.
So I don't believe the applicant has any control over the overall fencing on the site. They just have control of their lease area. So I don't believe, even if he was here, I don't think he'd be able to answer that because he wouldn't be able to control the overall fencing on the site. But I can broach that question with him.
Okay, yeah, it's hard to tell from the drawings exactly. I suspect that the fence they're going to construct around the pole is going to be inside the existing fence, but
that's my understanding, because they would control that lease area and everything within that newly fenced equipment yard.
Okay, well, it probably is not. Probably the most important thing is the 30 feet setback from the top of the bank, even if the fences do move a little bit. But if they don't move, I think that's good news, because it appears that there's plenty of distance from the creek.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Carol. Hi, Carol.
I just wanted to say, I also went out to the site. It was very hard for me to visualize or get very close. So the simulation, I'm hoping staff can verify that the simulation is fairly accurate in proportion, building height to cell phone tower height. And also, I hope that as this moves forward with the city, the graphics supplied by the applicant might be a little bit more developed. That I was challenged, to say the least, by the presentation that was provided. I had a hard time seeing stuff.
Okay.
Thank you, Carol. Arthur.
Yeah, I had the same question as Kevin did about the edge of the creek. So, yeah, I really want to verify that. I'm looking at the staff presentation, and I guess I'm on page 9 on the packet that we were given. And can we call that up? And it may not be page 9 because I didn't have the actual picture that you showed.
Are you talking about the photo simulation?
Well, I'd like to see that because it wasn't in my packet, but
Yeah.
it's labeled the site plan, and it's on page 9 of PDF page 9. So
Sure.
Can we put that up?
Yes. Let me get the actual plans rather than my PowerPoint.
No, I want yours.
Oh,
I want yours in this case because they don't match.
Is this the?
So that's not the one I have.
Okay.
So can you go up one more? Just cycle through the slides until we find the one I'm looking for. Yep, that's it.
Okay.
So it's labeled Santa Rosa Creek.
Yes.
So why is that?
I noticed that too.
This was prepared. Yeah, it was prepared by the applicant,
Okay.
and I received it in just enough time to have, because his original site plan did not include the creek at all.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess my comment here is I'm a little bit concerned with the lack of detail and attention to detail the applicant has provided in relationship to the creek, which is what we're actually discussing today. So the creek is labeled wrong, and I don't know if they even have the right creek. And then this edge of the creek on top of the bank issue isn't resolved. So that's my first comments. And then can you put up the pictures again? Because I didn't have those in my package.
Yes. So this is the view from Bluebell.
Okay. So I know it's not in our purview, but sometimes these are made into aesthetic, they look like a tree or something like that.
Yes.
There's no requirement for that?
No, I mean, we look at the context of the area.
Yeah.
It sometimes it's odd to have a 60-foot tall tree when there's no other trees around it. They usually fit better when there's sort of a grove or other vegetation to soften the view. I don't know if you recall, Canine Companions had a little bit more softer vegetation around the proposed cell tower there.
So is that picture, is the height of it, the relative height of it is 60 feet? Is that, pretty well represented?
I believe so.
Okay.
Here's another like straight on view of the tower.
Yeah, there's really no other trees to compare
Yeah.
it with. Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of hardscape up until the lease area for the cell tower.
Okay. Well, those are my initial comments and questions. Thank you very much.
Carol, did you still have a question?
I had a comment, and that was I went to Google Earth to look at the general nature, and Google Earth has this listed as Santa Rosa Creek. That may be where the applicant got it from. So I traced, quote, Santa Rosa Creek well into Fountain Grove, which I found fascinating. And it made me hope that we can have a visual tour at some point, maybe on Google Earth or some other way, of the creek system in Santa Rosa, because it's fascinating how to look at this. But it's good to know that that is actually a Piner Creek reach, not one of the main limbs of Santa Rosa Creek. Is that correct?
Steve, do you want to answer that one?
Yes, you are correct. It is Piner Creek and it is not Santa Rosa Creek. So I will see what I can do too, if I can reach out to Google to try to get that corrected.
Oh no, we can't believe Google on this. Now I'm in trouble. Are there other questions or comments by questions really at this point by committee members? I don't hear any. Why don't we move to, unless there is one?
I just had a question. So I think for a channelized creek, with the 30-foot setback wouldn't apply in that case. Is that right? That's my understanding.
Steve?
Not sure you
I'm
heard.
sorry, I couldn't hear that. Was that directed towards me?
Kristen has a question.
Sorry, I have a 14-month-old crying.
Can we see your pal? Okay, go ahead, Kristen.
We could probably handle that question offline and get back to the committee on that.
Okay, just to make things easy.
Yep.
Good suggestion. Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Is there anyone out there, Michelle?
It does look like we have some attendees. If you would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand now. Okay, and I am not seeing any hands.
Okay. Okay, so we'll close the public comment phase here, and I'll put it up to the committee. I can't put it. Kristen, did you have a question though before we proceed for Steve regarding the setback?
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that since this is a channelized creek, the setback exception would apply for this project.
Steve, I keep seeing Charles Carter light up green. Might he be trying to comment?
I can comment now.
Well, I
Can you
think
hear me?
because he's on the phone, he just can't mute himself. So we're just hearing the background noise. So that's just,
Good to know you're there, Charles. Steve, Chris and I had a question regarding the setback requirements. Did you get that question?
Yeah, so I can just tell you this reach of Pioneer Creek is definitely a channelized creek. So it's more of an earthen, a channelized creek, and there may be like riprap at the toe of the slope. So it would definitely be categorized as a channelized creek. So I think it is true, in fact, that the creek setback exception may apply for a channelized waterway.
Thank you. Charles, did you have a question?
I think the dog does.
This is the time for comments now, since we've had the public comment period. Charles, do you want to lead off?
Right.
Going in and out of mute.
Yeah, you're going in and out.
There he is.
Okay, it looks like I'm unmuted, so I'll make my comments quickly here. I am familiar with this stretch of Pioneer, and it is pretty much an industrial channelized piece, and I would support the setback exceptions here. And I'm also familiar with the area that it's highly industrialized, and unless the other committee members are adamant about a tree type antenna structure, I'm fine with the more functional industrial look for the tower in this location. Those would constitute all my comments at this time. Thanks.
Thank you, Charles. Carol, would you like to make a comment?
This is the first industrial looking cell phone tower that's come before this committee since I've been on it. So I defer to people with more experience to condone its rather stark appearance. And because there are no members of the community who are currently engaged to have that address, that also gives me some ease. I assume because this is going before several other boards within the city of Santa Rosa, that some other issues that are outside of the purview of the Waterways Committee will be addressed, but my Waterways concerns have been addressed. That's it.
Thank you, Carol. How about you, Kevin?
Thanks, Steve. So we explained to me what the setback exception entails here. The staff report says 30 feet because this was built prior to whatever it was, 2004. So it's 30 feet from the top of the bank. So when we're referring to the exception because it's a channelized waterway, what is that? Does that change to 30 feet?
So I believe it can go less than 30 feet so long as the water agency and Department of Public Works conclude that the proximity of whatever is being built would not interfere with the control and maintenance of that portion of the channelized waterway. That's my understanding.
Okay, well, my only comment was, or I guess I have two comments. One is it looks like a great spot for a pole like this. It's pretty far removed from all the structures around. It's in the back corner, which is pretty far from the battery company that's on that property. Across the railroad tracks and across the creek, I think across the railroad tracks might be some residential. So then I think that question about should it look like a tree or look like a pole might be applicable for those residents, but that hopefully is being handled separately from this committee. As far as the creek goes, it seems like it's far enough away as long as we verify that we're looking at 35 feet from the top of the bank, not from the middle of the channel. I was out there, but I have a sense it's 35 from the top of the channel, but I didn't measure it. There are a couple of fences between the creek and the site. So I think that really needs to be verified. But otherwise, it seems like it's pretty innocuous relative to concerns about the creek.
Thanks, Kevin. Mark.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything that's been said. It's definitely an industrial landscape that won't be harmed, I think, by this rather stark tower. And as far as the creek there, it sounds like the impact will be avoided. And so it seems like a good place to basically put a tower. So I don't really have much in the way of comments
Thank
other
you.
than that.
Arthur?
I'm familiar with this area, and being a practical, functional tower, I don't have any issue with, but I do have issue with they couldn't identify the creek correctly. There's questions on the top of the bank, edge of the creek. I don't think this was very well presented to us for us to make a recommendation because we don't have all the information. So I thought this was going to be straightforward and easy to make a recommendation on, but I would prefer to have had accurate information to work with. And so I can't really support this project until we have accurate information to work with.
Thank you, Arthur. The setback is appropriate. And as far as the look, on one hand, yes, from that vantage point, from entering the site, it does look like it fits into the fabric, urban fabric, or whatever you want to call it, of that industrial area. But from the other side, yes, it would probably be a little stark. But also, I wonder if we might want to, just for the sake of precedent, recommend that it be considered to be more of a natural look, because we may have other situations like this in the future. And I think we would like to see more natural look to anything that's constructed next to the creek. So are there other comments? I think I got everybody here. Anybody have any other thoughts?
Well,
Okay.
it's funny. And one more thing, it's funny about that Google thing, because I noticed that myself just recently, that there appeared to be two different Santa Rosa creeks, and I just kind of just went past it. But that's an interesting issue. I guess Google's not perfect. No news there.
Staff, is this, are you okay with, we had various comments. You okay with the direction of the committee, or at least the major thrust of the comments? Amy or Kristine?
I had one thought, and that is they were kind enough to do the simulation from Bluebell. Perhaps a simulation from the other side of the creek might help the other committees moving forward. I don't know if the reports will be more fleshed out as it moves through the process, or if the one set of documentation usually holds throughout all the presentations throughout the city.
Good point. Any other comments by our planners? Kristine, anything?
No, I had a lot of very constructive comments from the advisory committee. We are working with the applicant to get a little bit more accurate site plans to address the creek issue. And planning and engineering are working on that with the applicant at the moment.
Well, this might be a good time to end the discussion on this item. So thank you, Kristine, for being here with your little pal. And I think we can wrap this one up and move on to our next item. Thank you. Okay, why don't we move on to the Brookwood Medical proposal on 101 Brookwood Avenue. And we have here, I believe, who is our planner here?
Susie Murray.
Susie Murray, there you are.
Hi. I apologize for being late, a few moments late to the meeting. I had a back-to-back meeting and got waylaid for a moment. So I'm going to get my presentation up here. And can y'all confirm that you can see it?
Yes, we can see it.
Great. So the project before you, or the proposal before you this morning, is the Brookwood Medical. It's a multi-structure project proposed at 101 Brookwood Avenue, 884 and 1000 2nd Street, really occupying that whole corner parcel there adjacent to the creek. The project proposes to construct a 4-story medical office building, a 6-story parking garage, additional surface parking, and creek path improvements. It requires a major design review, which will go before the design review board, and a minor conditional use permit, which will be approved by will be reviewed or considered by the zoning administrator. Here's a kind of a neighborhood context and aerial of the site. I want to thank the applicant for this image. It has very nice, shows better than the aerial where the creek is, or the aerial that I had. The project site is right smack in the center here. As you can see, it's got a mix of what mostly commercial, but there is some nearby residential as well. Directly across the creek is the Santa Rosa Police Department, which I think is worth noting. Here are some existing photos. The picture in the top left corner kind of describes where each of those photos are taken from. So this first one here is taken from the corner of Brookwood and 2nd Street. This over here is taken from along Brookwood. Photo number 3 right in the center here is taken from along the creek, looking kind of northwest. Actually, I guess that's more north, right? Number 4 is a lovely photograph of the road, which kind of looks west towards the site. And then photo 5, this one, we're looking again north from a different perspective, a different angle. And the final one, number 6, is looking at the property from looking east from 2nd Street. So back the first time we really heard about the application, or worked with the applicant on this project, was doing a series of kind of pre-application meetings. The first one was introducing the project to the neighborhood. The second one, meeting with staff. And the third meeting, concept review before the design review board. The project that went before the design review board was a 3-story medical office building and a 4-level parking garage. The design review board provided quite a few comments, but I think their strongest comment was go up. This is right in the area, it's right on the edge of the downtown station area plan. And there, that's where we have the floor area ratio as opposed to building height. This is in an area with a floor area ratio of 4, and the applicant has modified their project at the design review board's recommendation to, I believe it goes up over a FAR of 2, and that is actually consistent with the general plan, is what I'm trying to say, is because it really recommends or encourages projects to go at a minimum center, the center point of that floor area ratio. In October, we received the formal applications, and then of course today, here we are at the Waterways Advisory Committee for some recommendations and comments. Here's a site plan, and here, this is where we're talking about 4. If you can see that chart up to the right. I'm not going to talk too much about the site plan and what have you. I've got just a few comments as I zip through here, because I know that you'll see a lot of these graphics again in the applicant's presentation. I don't want to be redundant, and they know more about their project because staff has had little time to process an analysis at this point. So here is one rendering. Again, I'm going to let the applicant talk to you about these. Precursor here. This is the actual parking garage. There's an image of both side by side. So the general plan land use designation here is neighborhood mixed use. Let me be redundant there. Neighborhood mixed use, neighborhood mixed use. It's in the NMU, which is also neighborhood mixed use zoning district, and the downtown station area plan. It's also within designated priority development area, which has been established by ABAG, or the Association of Bay Area Governments. I listed up here some of the goals and policies taken from the Creek Master Plan. Meet or exceed the required creek setback, which they have done, with the exception of the pathway, which is allowed, and then I think some amenities, some benches and whatnot. And again, I'll let them discuss that. Where discretionary approval for new development is sought adjacent to a creek, that the development shall, to the extent possible, be consistent with and support the master plan. Planners and decision makers will look for consistency between proposed projects and the master plan. The overall intent of this policy is to incorporate the creek into the project design. I think that there's all indication that they have done that. And new development, redevelopment projects shall comply with the city's NPDES stormwater permit, which they will be required to do prior to any recommendation from staff. The downtown station area plan and general plan have some overlapping goals and policies. So I just selected a few. Ensure that the construction is adjacent to creek channels, is sensitive to the natural environment. Orient buildings towards the creek while providing privacy, security, and an open transition between public and private spaces. This is a challenging one on this site because we also want them to orient the building to the street. I think I'll leave it up for the discussion of the applicant again. New development along channelized waterways should allow for an ecological buffer between the waterway and the development. Again, they have met and exceeded the required setback. Oh, and also the buffer should also provide opportunities for multi-use trails and recreation. The site plan does include an extension of the creek path along the project frontage. I'm not going to go through and read all of the design guidelines, goals, and policies. There are some overlapping with the general plan and the station area plan, but I think that this project is really supported by several design guidelines and implement several of the goals. So here are some creek cross sections. I did get a glimpse of the applicant's PowerPoint. So again, I'm going to defer to their engineer to discuss this with you. A landscape plan. The applicant team has the landscaper on, or the landscape designer, not landscaper, but landscape designer on the call. So she'll be talking a little bit about this. And I'm going to defer to her as well for this very colorful plant palette. So it came to my attention that somewhere in my presentation or my staff report that there was some sort of CEQA or California Environmental Quality Act determination calling this thing, this was not a project. That is not correct. We have not made a determination in how this project will comply with the California Environmental Quality Act, although I am quite confident that after staff's review, they will be eligible for a statutory exemption because they're within the station area plan and a priority development area, and have already received acknowledgement of that from the ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments. So with that, the Planning and Economic Development Department and the applicant requests that the Waterways Advisory Committee provide comments for the Brookwood Medical Project proposed at 101 Brookwood Avenue and 884 and 1000 2nd Street, And for anybody that's calling in, I'd like to give my contact information. If you can't see it on the screen, my name is Susie Murray. My phone number, and I do answer my phone, is 707-543-4348. And my email address is smurray@srcity.org. That concludes my presentation. I know that the applicant is eager to give their presentation. If you have any clarifying questions for me, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and get whoopsie, let's get rid of that. I'll get their presentation up and running here.
Thank you, Susie. I think what we'll do is proceed in having the applicant give their presentation, and then we'll open it up for questions. And I wanted to mention to the applicant, if they would like to speak, that we have a 5-minute limit on that, but we appreciate you being here. So who would like to present to the committee regarding the Brookwood Medical Project?
Mr. Chair, this is Kurt Nichols at Carlisle Macy. I believe that will be me. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, then. And then let's see, I guess, Susie, you will move the slides because I'm
Yes, just go
I'm
ahead.
not in control here. So yeah, so let's just go to the next slide then, please. Yeah, this just a brief introduction of our team. Accretive Realty Advisors is the owner developer of the project, and I think Tom LeBeau may be on the line here somewhere. The architects are Gensler, and I think there's maybe a few folks from Gensler on the call as well. And let's see, from Carlisle Macy, my company, myself, and Brianna Morrison, our other landscape architect. Next slide, please. So we already saw this. This is just the context for the project. Next slide. And then again, looking at the policy context, the Creek Citywide Master Plan. This is our location on Santa Rosa Creek. Next slide, please. And then this shows in more detail the things where we are, and essentially the plan is for a multi-surface path along the north side of the creek, or our side of the creek, if you will. Next slide, please. And then other policies included in the Creek Master Plan. I should have highlighted in the second paragraph the main part that this reach is recommended for preservation due to its natural amenities, value for fish and wildlife habitat, and recommended for enhancement by removing native species and replanting with natives. And then I also just mentioned that the part that's highlighted west of Brookwood, the proposed paved trail would be on the north right bank side of the creek, which is our side. Next slide, please. This is our site plan. And I think the main things to point out to the committee along the creek that's at the lower edge of the slide there. We are proposing to implement the portion of the creek path along this part of the creek that would connect with sidewalks along Brookwood and Second, and otherwise pathway through the site, so that there's kind of a loop available for folks that might be here at this facility, as well as others in the neighborhood. We are also proposing, hard for me to point, but along the kind of beige pathway that you can see along the creek, there's a couple of, we're proposing a couple of little areas that pop out where there would be picnic tables, so folks could enjoy being in close proximity to the creek, kind of a passive areas that would again be available for users of the facilities, as well as public that might want to walk along the creek. We're planning the creek path to be close to the edge of the vegetation. You can see the little triangles there are existing trees, so we're trying to snug up next to those, and in general. And then you'll see a few darker green areas kind of inboard of the path, kind of little dark green blobs. Those are bioretention, kind of wetland stormwater treatment areas that are proposed as part of the project. Let's see, as you can see, the office building is proposed to sit right up snug at the corner of Second and Brookwood, and the parking structure would be nearby and or along Brookwood. Next slide, please. Again, this is the view of the proposed 4-story building. We, as was mentioned, have been to design review board for concept design review. It was suggested that maybe the building could be even taller. So this is in response to that. We're at 4 stories now. You can see in this slide the parking structure. While it sounds like it might be bigger, the levels are actually shorter. So it's shorter and we believe more in scale with the building than it might sound when you hear 6 versus 4. Next slide, please. Again, these are other images. The one on the left is looking easterly on 2nd Street toward Brookwood. So you're looking at the kind of the west face of the building. And then the image on the right is looking north. So you're seeing the south elevation, which is, this would be the main entry for users of the medical office building from this side. Next slide, please. These are building elevations. We can get into if you're interested. I think the architects are online, but I don't know that this is really in the committee's area of interest. Next slide, please. These are additional images. These show more of the parking structure. The idea is to enhance the elevation along Brookwood with a couple different things to kind of break up the mass of the building. One is green screens with vines that are kind of mimicking some of the fenestration pattern in the building. For a portion of it, and then you can see the other portion is an idea of more of a kinetic art display that would actually come out from the face of the parking structure some. Next slide, please. And these again are elevations of the structure. Next slide, please. Let's see, back to the site plan. Actually, let's skip to the next slide. We just looked at this one. Just wanted to highlight here where the creek setback line is in relation to the rest of what you see on the site plan. And so the red dashed line is the creek setback. Next slide, please. Just to kind of take you for a little walk along the creek, if we start at the upper left, that would be starting at the southwest corner of the site and walking easterly kind of along the creek toward Brookwood. So that's kind of starting in the corner. And then the next slide to the upper right. Whoops, I'm sorry, I meant next image on that slide. You're quick, Susie, that's good. That's kind of the next, as you walk along the creek, you come to some of this little grouping of trees that extends out a ways from the bank. And then as you move looking down at the lower left, you can see another grouping in the distance, and then the middle bottom slide shows coming up on that grouping, and then even closer to that grouping on the right. Next slide, please. Upper left, and actually, yeah, both of these. Upper left shows a willow, a red willow that has trunks that extend out more horizontally, kind of way past the top of the bank. This is one that we're actually, we're thinking that it might be good to cut some of this back so that we could have the pathway a little bit closer to the creek. You can see, I think the upper one, oh no, I take that back. The upper one to the right is as we get closer to Brookwood. And then similarly, the lower left is in that same area as we're close to Brookwood Avenue. And then the one in the lower right is just kind of showing there's views into the creek as you walk along the top of the bank at various places. That's actually quite nice. So we'd like the pathway to take advantage of that. Next slide, please. Okay, this one, yeah, the upper left kind of is back to that willow I was mentioning that extends out. Upper right is the same more distant view, but you to point it out, and then the ones at the bottom are more close-up views. So that is one that we would like to trim back. So that's something I guess we would welcome your comments on as well. Other than that, everything else would be along the creek would be preserved, enhanced, other than to the extent there's invasive plants that would be in that area that we could address, that would be done, as well as the planting as part of the landscape plan additional natives. Next slide, please. So let's see, again, just to come back to the plan, let's see, since I can't really point here, let's go to the next slide, please. Just in the interest of time, I would have Brianna talk about this, but I'm not sure that we can kind of switch back and forth very easily. And I know that Sherry.
I'm right here,
indicated-
Kurt.
Oh, you can? Okay, go for it.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'll just real quickly describe what we're showing here is the entry to the building, which we're trying to complement the architecture with the building. This entry, if you were to come out of the building, you're sort of looking at the creek, which I think is interesting to note. There's a picnic note enlargement that's showing those little pop outs with some seating that Kurt was describing. And I think in this image, you can also see how we're trying to hug the top of bank and get into those trees without compromising them. The permeable paving and some of the seating and amenities shown is what we're proposing for along the creek. The permeable paving is porous pave, which kind of has the look of DG, but it's entirely permeable, so water can just go right through it. And then we're looking at some sort of steel and wood or steel tables along the creek with some trash and recycling receptacles as well. Susie, can you go to the next slide? I think it's the Kurt, do you want me to describe this or?
Sure. Just
Okay.
the lighting, yeah.
Yeah, this is just to show the lighting of the building and that we are proposing some bollards along the pathway, just enough to provide some security lighting or gentle lighting, but nothing really tall. It would all be bollard level. Next slide, Susie. And this is our proposed plant palette for the site. We're trying to go with a mix of things with like a soothing blue and green palette, but then pops of color. And these are primarily native or adaptive plants, and they are majority low water use. I think the only proposed plantings that would be moderate water use are the vines on the green screen, just because they need more water to grow tall, and perhaps some of the street trees. Along the creek, we would be doing nothing but native plantings and trying to pull the creek vegetation into the site a little bit within that creek setback. All right, I'll turn it back over to you, Kurt.
Okay, next slide, please. This just shows highlighted in red here where the sections were taken that you saw earlier, the cross sections through the site. So the one goes through the office building, the line on the left, and then the line on the right is taken through the parking structure. Next slide, please. And then here again are the sections. So the top one being the section through the medical office building and on out through the creek also shows where the bioretention areas are adjacent, shows the pathway and representation of some of the creek vegetation before you get to the creek. And then similarly with the parking garage. With that, I think that concludes our presentation. I apologize for exceeding your 5 minutes. I was unaware of the, as we put this together, but I was hoping this would be helpful to the committee. So we look forward to your comments.
Thank you, Kurt and Susie. This is very helpful. information. And as soon as we get back to our committee and to our full screen, there we go. I'll ask if committee members have questions of the applicants. Carol.
I wrote down a slew of questions, and some of them may have been answered while I was writing them down. First, when I was down there, I noticed there are a number of eucalyptus trees on this property side of the creek. I'm wondering if those are going to come down or not. Also, I was wondering if any of the large native trees on the creek were going to come down. You talked about a couple that may need pruning. You didn't mention any that were going to need to come down. I'd like to get that confirmed. The garden really interests me, and there's a big push for pollinator gardens, and specifically monarch butterfly way stations. I'm hoping that the landscape architect is aware of this, and that I couldn't tell if some of the plants were designed for their pollinator and monarch butterfly qualities, as well as the color palette. For the buildings, I'm interested in the backside of the medical office building, specifically having windows that were potentially eyes on the creek. I know that maybe a third of the office building will look out on the parking structure, perhaps. I didn't get a real good feel for that, but I'm sure that's something that could be addressed. And I'm wondering if there's another project in Santa Rosa that's been done in the last few years of this scale. It's very exciting to see a stretch of the Santa Rosa Creek being incorporated into a commercial project. This kind of reminds me of the Prince Memorial, that the creek is a feature, an asset. And if there's another commercial development that could be visited or reflected on that has similar interacting attributes of a commercial nature as opposed to a city park. I think that's enough for now.
Would the applicant like to, should we?
I'll take it. There's a list there. If it pleases the committee, I could, take a stab at those. I tried to write them down as.
Yeah, why don't you go and answer some of those questions?
So with respect to the eucalyptus, we haven't really discussed that. Essentially we were taking kind of a hands-off approach to the creek, other than the one willow that I mentioned. So we hadn't anticipated that. So I guess that's the answer. We weren't really thinking about getting into the creek, and but you're right. There are eucalyptus along there are some that are in there that I noticed as well. As far as removing any native trees, the answer is no. The red willow I was referring to has multiple trunks. It's kind of interesting. There's several like that actually, and we're just looking at. So I call it pruning, but it's kind of removing one of its trunks, I guess would be more accurate, but that's the extent of what we were looking at as far as removing anything along the creek. With respect to pollinator garden, I might have Brianna jump in on that, but I could mention that we are definitely familiar with that. In fact, we incorporated a pollinator garden in the redesign of Coffee Neighborhood Park. Recently that our firm did. So Brianna, do you want to comment on that? Or you?
Sure. Yeah. I don't think that we were in the landscape design. The vision was not to specify any certain area as a pollinator garden. However, the plants that we are proposing are pollinator. They're native plants. We have lots of different sages, hummingbird sage, different ornamental sages, fleabane, yarrow, which is a local native plant, Douglas iris, that's a big pollinator plant, mimulus or sticky monkey flower, also a pollinator. So I guess I hadn't really intentionally chosen those for their pollinator habitats for this project in particular. That's just something that we kind of do standard here in our office. We like to provide plants that are pollinator and bees and butterflies and hummingbird plants. They grow well, they're beautiful, and they enrich the environment. So we definitely have lots of those there, and we will take into consideration maybe focusing some of those, especially near maybe the picnic nodes along the creek. I think that would be really nice.
And then with respect to the building placement and eyes on the creek question, I think if we had the site plan, we could see that a little bit better. But the parking structure is up closer to the street, to Brookwood, and in fact, I think the way that the buildings are arranged kind of give more space, if you will, toward the creek. Granted, some of that space is used for vehicles to circulate on the site and pedestrians as well, some more paving. But the office building itself only, well, I would say kind of the north easterly corner of that building is more aligned with the parking structure, but most all the rest of it does face the creek and is actually, closer to the creek in the way that the creek comes up at an angle there. So I believe we do have a fair amount of eyes on the creek with that siting. With respect to other commercial projects along creeks, recently, I would defer to other city staff here maybe to weigh in on that. I can't think of any myself right off the top of my head, but it's an interesting question.
Thank you. Kevin, would you like to ask a question or a few?
Thanks, Dave. And thanks for the presentation. It looks like a great project. And I agree with some of the things said, that we're hoping for enhancement of the creeks throughout the city, but especially downtown. And this, I think, is a great demonstration project. You've got the path incorporated into the project. It looks like the elevation of the path is the same as the parking lot rather than set below the parking lot. Is that right?
Let's see, going back to the section. So it's, essentially the site, aside from, the slope down to the creek, it's all pretty much the same elevation, within a foot or so. Yeah.
Great. I think, that's wonderful. In so many places along the creeks, the trails are down below the elevation of the surrounding buildings. And so there aren't eyes on the trail, but in this case there are. And I love the fact that you've got the lighting along the creek as well. The pathway looks like it terminates on the west side of the project. Is there any consideration of the pathway being able to be continued off of this site onto the next site, maybe sometime in the future?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that we considered, and it's kind of part of when you're phasing something like right now. And if you went out and visited the site, you probably saw that there, from time to time, there are some homeless folks that, take up residence there and so forth. And I think this will help certainly clean that up. But if we kind of stubbed out a trail there, all the way to the property line initially, I think we'd have some concern about, how that might go initially. I think there might be some other ways to accomplish, certainly what's planned in the creek master plan is that the trail ultimately extends along there. And maybe there's a way to accommodate that, but I'm not sure that we want to physically put the improvements in there right now. We really wanted to, to kind of connect it so that, it connects to things and not leave an unconnected point. But I don't think that would preclude that. I think there'd be a way to perhaps still do that in the future.
Great. I think that's the key, as long as it's not precluded in the future. I'm thinking especially if someday we daylight the creek where City Hall is now and we have a nice walking path along there, it'd be nice to be able to continue all the way up to at least this site and beyond, ideally. So that sounds good if it's not precluded. I think the final question I have is the bioswales, the distance from the creek. Is there standard distance from the creek that you need to create a bioswale? I'm assuming that what ends up in the bioswale, the oil that runs off the parking lot, et cetera, gets filtered through the soil below the bioswale, and eventually that water may make its way into the creek. Is there a standard setback for bioswales from a creek like this?
I don't know of a specific standard, other than, certainly it needs to be, far enough away. We've done similar installations like this, elsewhere that, have worked fine. Part of this is also, kind of working with the drainage that's already in place. There's an existing storm drain from the existing development of the current office building and parking on the site, that goes to the creek, and we're simply going to intercept that so that we're not disturbing the creek at all, and creating any new outfalls. And so we're aligning these these bioretention areas kind of in a train along that path to get to that drain.
Great, sounds good. My final comment is just that I love the native planting along the creek. We've seen a lot of these projects, and oftentimes there appears to be a lot less native planting. So I love the idea of the native trees creating the canopy, and then the understory being native, and the idea of the pollinators, and Carol's idea to the monarch butterfly way station or whatever. I planted one in my backyard. It's great to see those around wherever we can, but just the fact that you're doing all the natives, I think is the perfect direction for these kind of developments along this creek. So thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, we need more milkweed.
Arthur, would you like to ask a question?
I'm sorry, me, you're saying?
No, Arthur.
Oh, I'm sorry, Arthur.
Oh, I didn't see your hand. Sorry, Mark.
That's okay. No, Arthur first.
Okay, I mean, you can go first if you like it, but so on the disclosure form, I brought this up via email, and I just want to point out that I really can't tell from the disclosure form if there's anybody that I know that I have to recuse myself. So I'm going to assume I can recuse myself, but this is to staff that this form just isn't sufficient for the applicant to be able to list everybody, and for at least for me to understand if there's any conflicts. And so I just want to point that out, but I'm going to assume that I have no conflicts. And good morning, Kurt. I hope everything's well.
Morning.
That's the best presentation of the Creek Master Plan maps that we've actually seen, at least I've seen, where you zoomed in on that. I have been asking staff to do that kind of presentation for us, and that's exactly what I'm looking for, is because the large scale maps are just, you can't find where the area is, and you zoomed in on it and made it really nice. So really appreciate that. And I want to note that this is a very challenge. The way this was presented and the way everything is fitting in, it made it look like it was easy, but this is actually a very, very challenging project to build on. We've seen it before. This has come up a couple of years ago where we got this, and they just couldn't make it fit. And now I see this is being made to fit, and extremely well. So I just want to point that out. So I have some questions associated with the setback. So on the map, it says setback line is 2021 creek setback, but I'm assuming that's the 30-foot setback. So that's my first question. Can we answer that real quick?
Yeah. And the reason it says 2021 is, as you indicated, this site's been around for a while. We've actually surveyed the creek to establish the creek setback many times at least over the last, 20 plus years. So since the last one was fairly dated, we did a new survey this year to verify where it was. A good part of the creek setback is driven by the fact that the creek bank is steeper than 2.5 to 1 for a good part of it. So from the physical top of bank, the calls for us to go back 2.5 to 1 from the toe of the slope, and then 30 feet. So in many cases, particularly on the westerly part of the the site along the creek where the creek bank's steep, that ends up with an area of close to 70 feet, back from the actual top of bank because of the steeper creek slope or bank slope.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. And then I just want to confirm with staff that for this area, for this setback, no structures are permitted. And so I'm assuming, and I'm pretty sure this is correct, that the path, the lighting, the benches, all of that those are not considered structures. Could I get an answer on that?
I know I can answer you in yes to the pathway. I'm going to make the assumption on the furniture, the seat, any benches or tables. I'd have to look into the lighting, and I will look into the lighting as part of the project. I can't imagine that would be disallowed. I'm not told. I think we may need to do an interpretation, because at this point, the only thing I know for sure is that the path can go into the setback. So stay tuned on that. I'm taking notes, and I will clarify before I do my presentation before the design review board and the zoning administrator.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that, because I really like how it's been developed and planned, and I hope everything can work. And then the last thing, I guess, is just a comment more than a question. Sorry, Steve. Is that planning palette? I mean, I don't know what it's going to look like when it actually gets in, but it's really pleasing to the eye when I look at it on the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arthur. Mark.
Yeah, so I may be wrong, but it seems like this is one of the biggest one-time installation of creek paths we've had in quite a while in the city. So I want to compliment the applicant for incorporating public access. I think back to the project we reviewed recently at Memorial Hospital, where security was a big issue and fences were a significant part of the plan. This seems much more kind of open and inviting. Certainly eyes on the creek is a good thing. Is there a map, maybe I missed it somewhere, showing kind of the paths where they're going to be and how they're going to connect?
I think there was a graphic included as an attachment.
Okay.
If you look at I had it up here a little bit ago.
It's I think preliminary landscape plan and the attachment we received.
I'm sorry, Mark, our board member Neely, I was wondering if it's, or were you looking for the creek graphic, or were you looking for project specific area graphic?
Project specific graph, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. If I can bring anything up on the screen, folks, just let me know what you'd like me to bring up, and I'm happy to.
Okay, I just wondered if there was some counting of that, because there do seem to be a number of paths and also a number of bridges. Is that also listed out somewhere? I mean, they're listed out, narratively, but I didn't recall seeing a actual diagram.
Of bridges on this property, or for this, or along the creek at this property?
Well, the ones that are proposed, yeah, in the project description. Am I confusing my projects here?
You may not be. As I said in my presentation, staff has had very little time to analyze this project, so we're really here. So I will defer. I'm hoping that maybe Mr. Nichols could help me and talk about any bridges.
Yeah, the only bridges. So in the Citywide Creek Master Plan, in a few locations, I believe it calls for there to be bridges constructed across the creek. This is not one of those areas. Okay. I believe in this area, the only bridge that's maybe referred to is the existing bridge that Brookwood Avenue makes over the creek. Mm-hmm. And that is, I think, kind of used in the plan. I think it's anticipated to be used as a transition area from a creek a path on the let's say the south side of the creek to moving to the north, and that that graphic kind of excerpt from the master plan that we had as part of our presentation, I think showed that bridge.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, I do agree with Art too. It's a very tough site to fit all this stuff into, but it looks like you did a good job on that. So I want to compliment you there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else? Well, I would like to have a couple questions. Could we put up the preliminary landscape plan back, the attachment that we received separately from the initial presentation, I guess is where it was.
So just to clarify, you don't want the presentation, you want the attachment.
The attachment, yeah.
Oh, you're challenging my technical skills. Hold on.
That's exactly what I'm trying to accomplish. No.
Susie, if you can tell me what attachment number it is, I can pull it up for you.
Michelle, I don't know. It's either 4 or 5. I think it's in 5, but I'm bringing it up. Don't worry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, Susie. It might be in your original one. I don't know. I'm seeing it on theirs though.
I'm just bringing up the plan sets. So.
So Mike, I have a couple questions I'll just start on. I'm assuming that you are intending to actually build the path in your plan, and that's true, I assume?
Yes.
Great. So my questions, and the fence is, what kind of material is the fence made up of?
I don't believe we have a fence.
No fence at all?
There is a wood fence that is proposed between the drive aisle from 2nd Street and the adjacent property. But that's not, the creek is far below from that. So there is no fencing adjacent to the creek or along the creek.
Well, that's good news. I'm glad about that. My question regards also the access. So it looks like there's kind of like an area on there where it's kind of the little parallel line to go from the office building through the parking lot. Is that just a pedestrian marking that will be put in there, or some sort of separate material that will make people know where to cross that parking lot?
Yeah, those are, essentially those kind of now that the graphics up that look like the little bars across there. Yeah, those are just intended, they would just be, essentially crosswalks that would just be painted there that would designate the paths of travel from the parking to the building. And that's kind of the one main access. Well, there's 2 of them. One is actually to connect the creek path around to 2nd Street, as I indicated, so that you could kind of walk in a loop if you want so desired.
Great. So I guess my remaining question regards the path and the connectivity of it. It was brought up before, and I think Kevin brought it up regarding how the path will link up to parcels to the west and really to the east too, because I don't know how the path will proceed to the east, if it would be a crosswalk or somehow lighted and safely, or if it would be an undercrossing that would be potentially possible. If it were, it would seem like the path should go to the street in kind of a more of a straight line than go up. And also on the west side, I'm a little unclear how we will proceed in constructing a pathway system that would go, as Kevin mentioned, to where the city hall site is, unless it actually goes to the property line. Because I'm just trying to think of the process of how we would be able to get the right of way and get the path built on this property that could connect to a path along the creek on the parcel to the west. That it could get quite complicated. And so that's just a question at this point, but that's something I'm thinking about.
Hmm.
Is that connectivity issue.
Right.
So anyway, I get that you don't have an answer right now to that, Kurt, or is that something that you're just?
Yeah, I mean, I could see some
about?
different possibilities to, to do that range from, building that now. And I think I indicated what our hesitation, at least mine hesitation would be in that. All things considered, that,
Yeah.
that could be the appropriate path, if you will. The other might be to, reserve an easement there to construct it in the future when it connected to something.
Yeah.
So those are two possibilities that occur to me.
Well, this is something the staff may want to consider. I think unless there are other questions by any committee members, are there any other before we go to the public comment? Okay. Why don't we open the public comment and see if people would like to make comments. Michelle, do you want to introduce that?
Yeah, if you would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand now. Okay, and I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, we'll close the public comment part. Let's go to the recommendations. Arthur, you want to comment on the project?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, challenging project, really fitted in well. Everything seems to be, well done. I would echo Steve's comments though. I'm looking at Google Earth and the whole, this is a beautiful segment. It's really well planned, but the overall plan is to have segments connected. And so the property to the west, I mean, you have to get right down to where the creek is for this pathway. So I would just, I mean, it's going to be one giant loop that I would have to connect into. But I would hope the applicant can take a look at that and make it a little bit more flexible. Seeing that the pathway coming from the west is going to be really close to where the creek is and not as far north. Other than that, I'm really glad to see this project developed and developed so well. Thank you.
Yes, Charles, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, yeah, and I'm down to less than 10% battery. So
Uh-oh.
I'll try to be quick. I think the other committee members raised all the good points about this project, and I think the project is headed in the right direction, both in terms of its addressing the creek and how it looks at intensifying land use in the downtown area. And it seems to be a good project because of those two reasons, and that I would support. I'd also like to see some indication of how the path that is included in this project might be continued in the future. I'm not sure that that's
Committee member Carter, you're sounding muffled.
okay. Sorry, I'll
that's
wrap
much
it
better.
up. Okay, yeah, I was a little bit away from my phone. Sorry. Anyway, I think the direction that the landscape plan is going will enhance the creek, the usability of the creek, and bring eyes onto the creek along with the office building. Some indication of future alignment of a creekside path extending beyond this property would be useful for us. The other comment I'll make is that this is really an important project in terms of downtown density and opening up the creek. I'm sure the use permit can be processed appropriately by the zoning administrator, but given its prominence and importance both as a creek project and a downtown intensity project, it might be appropriate to have the planning commission look at this. And those are my comments for now.
Thank you. Mark?
Yeah, I pretty much made the comments that I had, I think, earlier. So yeah, I'm going along with everybody else on this. I think it's a good project. And yeah, I look forward to more details in the future as this progresses.
Carol.
I'm really excited to see this move forward. I go by there fairly often, so I can remember the RV that's been out there, the tent, the signage that's been up for sale for literally years. I would love to be able to peek into the past to see what this parcel was 100 years ago. Was it part of a farm? Because it is such a large rural property, literally smack in the middle of Santa Rosa, and to see it retaining some of its character because of the creek component is real exciting. Adam Sharon, who's not here today, is our resident landscape architect on the Waterways Committee, and I'm glad that he'll be looking at this as part of the design review board. He's always the one who beats the native plant drum for us. So I'm trying to fill in for him. And the additional beating of that native plant drum is there's certain certification that can be done so that you can put up signage that says certified native plant garden, monarch butterfly way station, and tying it back into the medical/health community, as we are providing for the health of not only our patients, but for the environment as a whole. I'm sure there are restrictions as far as both pesticides and fertilizer that are part of that. But kudos for the landscape design team doing whatever they can to enrich and enhance the health of the Santa Rosa Creek. And looking forward to seeing this move forward.
Kevin, do you have any comments?
I'm looking forward to seeing this move forward as well. I love the project. The amenities along the creek, I think, are very well done. And Carol, I'm glad you're continuing to beat the drum for the native plants. That's great. I'd echo comments from Art and Charles. I think that the continuation of, and Steve, the continuation of the trail along the creek is important to me. And I've long wondered how we are going to accomplish that through downtown, because there's so many areas of the creek that appear to be overgrown, which probably is the least of our worries, but with building right up to the edge of the creek. So like we talked about earlier, the trail would have to go down close to the creek in order to make it continuous. And so I wondered if that's something, Steve, Brady, you might have a really good idea of what this looks like in the future when we can have trails all along the creek downtown, as well as trails throughout the city. And that might be something we want as a committee to talk about in the future. I'd love to know what the plan is to make these trails continuous through, especially through downtown. So it might be food for thought. But as far as this project goes, if we can build it such that we're planning for future extensions of the trail, I think that would be wonderful. So otherwise, it looks great.
Yeah, so I can just add on the creek trails for Santa Rosa Creek. That was originally proposed in the original 1993 Santa Rosa Creek master plan. And we realize that is kind of a challenging component because there's so much private property, where the majority of our creek paths and trails around the city where we're proposing them are actually on public property. So this is a more challenging area, and I think, we're hoping as sites are redeveloped, we can get portions of the trail in place, and then, we would have a contiguous pathway at some point, but I think it will take some time.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Well, I think this is a good model for future developments. And it's very effective, I think, the way that the creek trail is planned in this development.
Thank you all. I would like to say, first of all, that I am very pleased to see the thoroughness and the sensitivity of the planning process here by the applicant. I think this is a model project. And I also think that the information presented to the committee raises the bar substantially from applicants. There are times when we have very little to go on. And this is a very thorough and complete and well done presentation. And I want to thank the applicants. And I do want to note that Kurt Nichols was integrally involved with creating the Prince Memorial Greenway plans. So good to see you back, Kurt.
Thank you.
And so I look forward to future seeing this and walking on this new path. And to echo what Kevin just brought up, I came here from Boulder, Colorado, where I went to planning school and worked for the head planner in Boulder for his consulting firm, and know that in Boulder, they had a program where they actually worked with property owners who would voluntarily work with the city to sell easements to the city. And so they completed their paths in that way. And so we might talk about that in the future and have a discussion about that, because there is potential, perhaps from open space funds or some other source, grant funds, whatever, where we could initiate a program like that, again, with voluntarily by landowners is what I'm talking about. So that's a future topic. Is there anything else anyone would like to bring up regarding this project?
I have a curiosity more than anything else. If this moves through the system, the city system, unimpeded, when might work begin on this? And crystal ball completion date?
Let's see. I don't know if I can, I'm not sure if Tom LeBeau is online and able to speak to this, the developer. He's probably best to answer it, but I know that he's anxious to build this as soon as possible, to the extent that, considering actually trying to get started on the construction documents, perhaps a wee bit before we actually have official approval through the design review board, or anything we can do to expedite it. So I think that the intent is that to see this happen within the next year or so. But is Tom able to speak to that?
Yes, thanks for the question. My name is Tom LeBeau. I'm the CEO of Accretive Realty Advisors, and I am the principal proponent of this project. We are seeking to move this project along as expeditiously as we can, given the constraints we have in some entitlement issues that we need to go through with the city. And we're seeking some input right now from the city with regard to conditions of approval, which we would need before we commence our construction drawings, which are, as you would imagine, for a project of this magnitude, quite an investment. But if everything goes well, I believe we will be in construction of starting construction of this project sometime in the early fall of 2022. The project will go in kind of phases. So the actual construction of the shell and core of the building and the completion of the parking structure should take, from that period, 12 to 18 months. So in theory, you guys could have a path to walk on, if all goes well, sometime in the early winter of 2024. Now, there are a lot of, I got mentioned that we're still in entitlements for the project, and we're still seeking input from various city departments, but we've got a very capable project team, and we've got, I think, some of the best folks assembled to respond to any city comments in a manner that's both professional and complete, which is endemic of what you're looking at from this presentation. So I hope I answered your question. We're excited about it, and just on a personal note, we're actually thrilled to have the creek there. We think it's great for our patients. It's a great connectivity potential to the hospital to the east. And with respect to the connectivity issue to the west, as an owner, I would be happy to accept any condition of approval that the zoning administrator would want to put on the property in terms of an easement or something along those lines to promote connectivity to our adjacent property, private property owners.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate your comments. We look forward to walking on that trail and seeing the beautiful landscaping. And just want to ask Amy. Amy, do we have any idea for future meetings at this point, or is that just, we'll just see what happens in January?
Susie, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did want to just clarify, just for my notes, if I could, that I'm hearing loud and clear that the extension of the pathway to the west is a recommendation, and I've got that, and trying to figure out how we're going to do that either through this project or in the future. Other than that, I heard pretty much that we're real happy with the project. That was the only strong recommendation I heard. So can you just confirm that?
Well, Susie, I just want to mention that the pathway to the east is another question to see how that might connect, because the path is supposed to go in the back of the shopping center or on one side or another, I should say, of the creek going towards Memorial Hospital. And so that's just a consideration for perhaps the engineers to weigh in on and how that might occur, and whether that path needs to go in a linear manner toward the sidewalk there on Brookwood, or conform to the plans that have been submitted. But I think that's a consideration just to see how that connectivity could occur in the future on the east side as well. Are there any other things that need to be clarified for?
Yeah, Susie, just on the structured, non-structured question, that's the only other thing. I think just confirm that everything can be put in the setback.
Got those both. And I also would like to say that Mr. LeBeau has said that he will get this constructed. Staff is equally as excited about this project, I should say. And he said that he will construct it prior to my retirement. So he's only got a few years.
We'll be happy to go to the groundbreaking. Amy, is there anything you want to say about future meetings?
No, so our next meeting that's scheduled is January 27th. So we will have a couple items. So plan on meeting that Thursday morning.
Good to know.
And you'll let us know if we're still on the committee or not, or what needs to happen?
Yeah,
Okay.
The clerk's office usually notifies us when we're getting near terms. So I'll check in with her.
Well, I had to reapply. I mean, several of us had to reapply. So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, hopefully we'll see how you all in January, and have a wonderful holiday. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting.
And good luck, Charles, up in Tahoe.
Yeah.